And good afternoon, good evening, and good night, and welcome to today's ceremony. It's 2025, it's 110 years since the Australians and the Kiwis landed at Gallipoli, and it's a very big commemorative service this year here on ANZAC Day. We're going to be going to the Melbourne Shrine of Memorial, where they'll be holding the Dawn Service. We're just currently waiting for that to start up. As I've said in the chat, please, there is no monetization applying to either of these streams. If you do want to consider it, feel free to head to the Return and Services League, which is the nationwide organization that assists our return services personnel and their families and provides services and assists them. So, uh, oh crap! I had meant to have my. Oh no, here it is. Hang on. Forgot to get my thing ready. Hey, break us off in the morning. So ordinarily, I'd wear this on my chest, but otherwise it wouldn't be in screen. So that is live. We're just waiting for them to go to it. So it should be sometime in the next 5 minutes or so. Trying to be all solemn and everything like that, like I usually do, but I'll be perfectly honest, I was in a dead sleep about 10 minutes ago. Uh, so, for those of you that are unaware, Anzac Day is Australia and New Zealand. Sorry, Anzac Day is the day when we celebrate the Australian New Zealand Army Corps that also incorporated individuals from the Tonga Islands. It broadly commemorates all Australians and New Zealanders who served and died in all wars, conflicts, and peacekeeping operations, and the contribution and suffering to all those who have served. Observed on the 25th of April every year and was originally devised to honour the members of the Australian and New Zealand Army Corps who served in the Gallipoli campaign, the first engagement in the First World War between 1914 and 1918. It marks the anniversary of the first campaign that led to major casualties for Australian and New Zealand forces during the World War. The acronym ANZAC stands for Australian New Zealand Army Corps, whose soldiers were known as the ANZACs. ANZAC Day remains one of the most important national occasions in both Australia and New Zealand. I'm going to be respectful at the moment because this day does mean a fair bit to me, especially because I have family members that have had served. My grandfather is now passed, but um, I do feel like the respect for this day is dwindling, and I do believe that that has been caused by certain factors. So, but we can talk about that another time. Today is not the day for it. So, what was the Gallipoli campaign? In 1915, Australian New Zealand soldiers formed part of an Allied expedition that set out to capture the Gallipoli Peninsula in the Ottoman Empire to open the way to the Black Sea for Allied navies. The objective was to capture Constantinople, the capital of the Ottoman Empire, which was a member of the Central Powers of the war. The Anzac force landed at Gallipoli on 25 April, meeting fierce resistance from the Ottoman Empire. What had been planned as a bold strike to knock out the Ottomans from the war quickly became a stalemate, mainly because they were told to land at the wrong place and had to go up an incredibly steep hill, which basically just allowed the Ottomans to shoot down at them. It was supposed to be a quick strike, however, the campaign dragged out for 8 months. At the end of 1915, the Allied forces were evacuated after both sides suffered heavy casualties and endured great hardships. Allied deaths totaled over 56 6,000, including 8,709 from Australia and 2,721 from New Zealand. Use of the landing at Gallipoli made for a profound impact on Australians and New Zealanders at home, and April 25 it became the day on which they remembered the sacrifice of those who died in the war. The Gallipoli campaign failed to achieve its military objectives of capturing Constantinople and knocking the Ottoman Empire out of the war. The actions of the Australian and New Zealand troops during the campaign bequeathed an intangible but powerful legacy. The creation of what would become known as the ANZAC legend became an important part of our national identity and of that of New Zealand. This has shaped the way their citizens have viewed both their past and understand of the present. The heroism of the soldiers in the failed Gallipoli campaign made their sacrifices iconic in New Zealand memory, and is often credited with securing the psychological is often credited with securing the independence of the nation. So, why are we here this morning? It's for the commemoration of a dawn service. A dawn service was first held on the Western Front by an Australian battalion on the first anniversary of the Gallipoli landing on April 25, 1916. And historians agree that in Australia, dawn services spontaneously popped up around the country to commemorate the fallen at Gallipoli in the years after this. The timing of the dawn service is based on the time that the ANZAC forces started their landing at Gallipoli. It also has origins in a combination of military, symbolic, and religious traditions. Various stories name different towns as having been the first service in Australia, including Albany, Western Australia, but no definitive proof has been found to corroborate any of them. In Rockhampton, Queensland, on 26 April 1916, over 600 people attended a service that started at 6:30 a.m. However, the dawn service held in the Sydney Cenotaph in 1928 and laid claim to being the first of a continuous tradition. In 1931, the service at the Cenotaph was the first attended by the Governor and representatives of the state and federal government. The dawn services were originally very simple and in many cases were restricted to veterans only. To remember and reflect among the comrades whom they had shared a very special bond. Before dawn, the gathered veterans would be ordered to stand to, and a lone bugler would play the last post. 2 minutes of silence would follow, concluded with reveille. In more recent times, the families of veterans and the general public have been encouraged to take part in the dawn services. Some of the ceremonies have also become more elaborate, including hymns, prayer readings, layings of wreaths, laments, and the playing of the Australian national anthem. But others have retained the simple format of the dawn stand to. The fourth stanza of Lawrence Bunyan's poem for the fallen, known as the Ode of Remembrance or simply the Ode, is often recited. I just want to double check that I am not. I think last year they started the stream and then it. I'm guessing me being choppy was because of the noise gate. Didn't really think about it, unfortunately. I don't intend to do too much talking through this for obvious reasons, but the RSL ever see this, please don't copyright claim me. It's just gone 5:31 in the morning. I'm hoping next year that I'll be able to attend this in person and take Scarlett with me. They're currently
Good morning.
Oh.
The dawn service will begin soon. And as we come together on the lands of the Bunurong, I invite Uncle Mark Brown, Bunurong Elder, to present the Welcome to Country.
Good morning. I am Uncle Mark Brown, and I'm an elder and senior cultural heritage officer of the Bunurong people. I'm a Gunditjmara man on my mother's side, and I'm a Bunurong man on my father's side. And this morning, I'm here to welcome everybody to my father's country. Beautiful Bunurong country. But before we do that, we pay our acknowledgements and we pay our respects. We pay our respects to all of my ancestors. We pay our respects to all of my elders. And we pay respects to all of my community members, past, present, and emerging. And we acknowledge the continuous and unbroken connection to country for the Bunurong people. We also pay our acknowledgements and respects to all traditional custodians of Australia, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander, who work, rest, live or play on Bunurong country. We acknowledge their continuous and unbroken connection to country for all of their people. And we thank each and every single one of them for being here with us. But today, on the sacred lands of the Bunurong people, we all gather in the spirit of respect and unity. And this welcome, it's an opportunity. It's an opportunity for us to honour and respect the deep cultural heritage of the Bunurong people of the Kulin Nations, whose elders and community members have generously looked after these lands for countless generations. My people have a deep spiritual connection to these lands, encompassing all of our rivers, our mountains, our coastal areas, and all of our beautiful bushlands that surround us today. Our traditional territory spans from the Werribee River in the west and moves to Diggers Rest in the north. We move over to the Dandenong Ranges, the Yarra Valleys, and down to Wilson's Prom. We encompass the top end of Tasmania, which we share with the beautiful Palawa people. French, Phillip, King and Flinders Islands are also ours. These are the traditional lands and territories of the Bunurong people that I welcome everybody to today. And as I said, we have a deep spiritual connection to our lands. And we have a strong cultural identity tied to our ancestral plains. All of our stories, our traditions, our language, our culture, and Bunjil's law are interwoven with the very fabrics of the soils that surround us, reflecting my people's profound knowledge, wisdoms, and ongoing custodianships to all of our ancient lands. And as we gather here today, we recognise that this welcome is a part of our shared journey. Shared journey of reconciliation. It's a shared journey of understanding. And by acknowledging and encompassing the deep ritual heritage of all of our people, we strive to foster mutual respect, cultural exchange, and a celebration of diversities. And so on behalf of all those gathered here today, I extend my heartfelt welcome to my people's country. May our time together be filled with reverence, learning, and a renewed commitment to honouring and cherishing the Bunurong people and all the traditional custodians of this country. So Womanjenka Balakiakia, Ngata, Bunurong Balag Bik. And for all those who do want to be here, you are welcome. We come with purpose. Welcome to beautiful Bunurong country.
Thank you very much, Uncle Mark Brown. The dawn service will begin soon.
Thank you to everyone that's come in and is watching the ceremony with us. I'm just going to take a minute because, well, frankly, I need it. I'll be right back.
There's no other morning like this one, and there's no other gathering like this one. Attendance is not mandatory. It's not festive. There's no team to cheer for. There are no bargains to collect. There's no special prize for coming and no penalty if you don't. It's dark and it's chilly. And when the sun finally does appear, it's over. Yet we're still here. By the tens of thousands, we're here with an understanding of what has been done for us and to honour the people who have done it. The ones who sacrificed their own happiness and their own lives, people we carry in our blood and in our stories, and many of whom would never know just how much they meant to us. And that we'd come to a place like this just to say that we understand and to say thank you. Thank you for the peaceful dawns you gave us. Thank you for the dawns to come. And thank you for this one, for this moment together. Good morning, I'm Justin Smith, and on behalf of RSL Victoria, welcome to the Shrine of Remembrance in our city of Melbourne. And it's an honour to stand here with you. And it's an honour to stand next to Uncle Mark Brown today, as we acknowledge the traditional owners of the land we meet today, the Bunurong people. We also remember the First Nations people, all the First Nations people who served this country in uniform. Beyond our quiet and grateful moments, and beyond the anniversaries and the ceremonies, there's also a constant determination to honour those who fought for us, no matter the years between, no matter the colour, to honour where they rest and how they're remembered. The family and comrades of Richard Norton were determined. Late last year, Richard Norton was awarded the Victoria Cross for his actions in the Vietnam War. He was just 19 years old in 1968 when his platoon was ambushed. 3 times he ran into the open to save his wounded comrades and to push back the enemy. Richard Norton was decorated at the time for his bravery, but many thought nothing less than the Victoria Cross would do. His family and mates pushed for years, and now they've finally done it. But the Victoria Cross is posthumous. Richard Norton died in 1972, killed while serving with the Australian Federal Police. More than just the medal itself, it was the determination of the people who loved him to ensure his name was placed among the highest, and that it always would be. They could have left it alone, but they didn't. His friend George Hulse, who was also there that day, says, "You must be there to pick up a mate." So the bravery of Richard Norton, BC, once only known by a few, becomes known by many more. And his name rings out across this Melbourne morning. We're determined to remember Samuel Pearce from Mildura, who fought at Gallipoli in the Western Front, and when the Great War was over, he joined the British forces to fight in Russia, as some Australians did. And it was in Russia that his bravery earned the highest decoration. But that same bravery also took his life. Sergeant Pearce was killed in Russia and buried in a place that later became a scrapyard, and it was only discovered in 2018. His remains were then put into a plastic box, and they've been held at a Russian morgue ever since. And that's where he is this very morning, in a plastic box. Bureaucracy and the perils of international diplomacy have not yet allowed this soldier to be put to rest in an Australian war cemetery. And though Samuel Pearce is counted as an Australian Victoria Cross recipient, his remains are deemed the responsibility of the British government. But his family are determined, and the journey of Samuel Pearce is not over yet. We're determined not to forget the thousands killed at the Battle of Fromelles, 1916. For almost a century, the bodies of some of our men lay in unmarked graves. But last year, 7 were identified and their headstones rededicated, 109 years after they fell. One of them was Alfred Fitch, a boy from Swan Hill, killed behind enemy lines. His mother's name was Emily, and after the war, she waited and she waited and waited. What happened? Was he really gone? Had it been a mistake? Would he come walking down the road with his bag over his shoulder late one afternoon? I wish I could find where he is, Emily once wrote. She would never live to know. But we know, thanks to Alfred's proud descendants and their DNA, we now know. And this is his headstone, at last. We're determined to remember Hugh Martin. At this moment, his body rests in an unmarked grave at the Brighton Cemetery, without one chiselled word to even hint at what he had done for us. Sergeant Martin served with the 37th Battalion in France, where he was wounded. And after the Great War, he joined the RSL and became Victoria's state president and was a leading figure in the first ANZAC Day, as we know it today. And he successfully pushed for the 25th of April to become a public holiday. RSL Victoria is now making plans to honour his grave. We're determined to recognise the Royal Australian Corps of Signals as they celebrate their 100 years. The men and women of the Signals Corps, of which there have been over 100,000, have provided vital communication in battle, from the early dots and dashes of Morse code to the latest technology. They understand that war is hard enough without the ability to communicate. And the names of the Signals Corps heroes live on, from Captain William McCutcheon, who served in the Boer War and then both World Wars, where he ran telephone wire, often while being shot at. Signalman Martin Jock Wallace served with the SAS Regiment in Afghanistan and received the Medal of Gallantry after his unit was ambushed and outnumbered and had to hold back the enemy for 18 hours. And Captain Lionel Matthews, a signals officer who was taken prisoner by the Japanese, where he set up an intelligence network to help other prisoners escape and built a radio transmitter from scrap parts. In 1944, he was interrogated and tortured, but he would not give up the name of his comrades. So he was executed. The technology may have changed the Signal Corps, but the reason they exist hasn't. Neither of the risks. 2025 marks 80 years since the end of World War II. And most of us only have our imaginations to know what it must have been like to be there at the end of a long war. To say goodbye to the threat, goodbye to the fear, goodbye to the killing, and goodbye to the goodbyes. But the people cheering in the streets must have wondered, as the parties died down and life began again, if anyone would remember them 80 years later. Would their sacrifices be recognised, their names recalled? And if they were still alive, would anyone even care? Well, today, as the march comes down St Kilda Road, George Runting, Beryl Maynon, Terry McMahon, and David Westwood will be there. All were once radar operators and mechanics with the Royal Australian Air Force. and it was their job to warn of coming attacks, but at home, both at home and in the Pacific. And George, Beryl, Terry and David are all celebrating 100 years of life in 2025. So the answer is yes. We do care. We do know their names. And we're grateful for every chance they give us to say thank you one more time. And marching with them today are soldiers and police who served in conflicts that aren't always remembered with the same determination, like the peacekeepers and peacemakers of Cyprus, Cambodia, Indonesia, Bougainville, and Somalia. Sometimes their service came and went without any attention. There were no parades at the end and their anniversaries go unnoticed. But there was a time when they left their families and they risked their lives. They have our love and respect. And we're sorry if they ever felt like they'd been forgotten. We remain grateful. Australians have fought or tried to cultivate peace across the world for more than a century. And often we only know what happened because someone was there to tell the story. Australia's Damien Parra was a storyteller. Melbourne's Damien Parra. And when the Japanese came south, he was the official video photographer for the Australian Imperial Forces in New Guinea. Our men were vastly outnumbered by the Japanese, an enemy who were masters of camouflage in a place where there was plenty to hide behind. And there was a fear that people back home in Australia didn't understand the gravity of what was happening just a few hundred miles from our coast and what it would mean if we failed. So Damien Parra told the story, climbing into the trees with his camera, filming our soldiers in the mud and the misery of Kokoda. The images were powerful and they were important. And it even won him an Oscar in 1943. But his own story became as tragic as the ones he filmed. Damien Parra was killed by a Japanese machine gun fire, with his camera still rolling, and his wife at home, pregnant with their first child. This year is the 50th anniversary of the killing of the Balibo Five, a group of television journalists in East Timor to cover the Indonesian invasion. None of them had reached the age of 30 when they were murdered. And Roger East, another Australian journalist, was also killed when he followed their trail to find the truth. Their families love and grieve them still, and no one has ever answered for the crimes. Melbourne journalists Michael Birch and Bruce Piggott were in Saigon in 1968, trying to make sense of a war that few back home understood. One hot night, they were having a beer, laughing and making an ironic toast that war was hell. But in the early hours, they were off to chase another story, and the irony became reality when they were ambushed along with John Cantwell from Sydney and UK journalist Ron Laramie. They were all killed. So was foreign correspondent Tony Joyce, executed by militia as he covered the 1979 conflict in Zambia. And photojournalist Paul Moran, killed by a suicide bomber in Iraq, 2003. Camera operators, writers and photographers, both independent and from Australian Defence Forces, have risked their lives to find the right words or to take the picture that's worth 1,000 of them. And even today, they're telling the stories and they're still in danger. And for as long as Australians have been going to war, there have been mothers who have had to say goodbye, often forever. Thousands of letters have been sent from sons to mothers, written from deserts, jungles, ruined towns, oceans, air bases, prison camps, trenches, and hospital beds. And often the soldiers would find a way to give their mothers a more gentle image to shield their families from the horror. Private Vivian Main wrote a letter home on December 25, 1917. My dearest mother, we're somewhere in France and I've just finished my Christmas dinner. And oh, how I'd love to be there with you all. You should have seen me this morning. No bath or shave for a couple of weeks. I look like Robinson Crusoe from your loving son. Later that Christmas day, Vivian Main was killed in action, just 24 years old. And when their child died, mothers often received a medal for their loss. It was called the Mothers and Widows Badge. And sometimes the badge was decorated with stars, one star for each child lost. Mary Hutchins had 4 stars on hers. She watched 7 sons go to World War II and only saw 3 return. Behind each of the 103,000 Australians killed in war, there was a mother somewhere, and a great grief and a great love collapsing into an unbearable grief. And when change was needed inside our Defence Forces, it was the mothers who pushed for the Royal Commission into defence and veteran suicide. Because while many thrive in the military, others suffer from their service, suffer from what they've seen and what they've done, and suffer to become civilians again. And the people who love them suffer, because just as pride and tenderness can spread through a family, so can the pain. So with our determination to honour the sacrifices of war, we remember, as one mother calls them, the living sacrifice. It's almost dawn. There's no other morning like this, and there's no other gathering like this. In these quiet moments before the sun comes, feeling pride and grief, gratitude and sadness, for the stories we know, for the stories still to be told, and for the people who risk their lives to tell them. For the fighters and the peacemakers, for the ones who can still hear our thanks, and for the ones long gone. The ones who never got a chance to live a full life and would never know that there'd be mornings like this, and that it was because of them. For the mothers, for the children they lost in war, and for the ones who became like invisible stars on a medal that no one ever wanted. And for this chance to be here together again, to say thank you, and to find just as much in the silence as we do in the ceremony. Lest we lose our determination, and lest we forget.
Lest we forget.
Will the official party please be upstanding for the dawn service?
Stand to!
Dr. Robert Webster, State President, RSL Victoria, will recite the ode.
In memory of the fallen and those who've since passed on. They went with songs to the battle. They were young, straight of limb, true of eye, steady and aglow. They were staunch to the end against odds uncounted. They fell with their faces to the foe. They shall grow not old as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them. lest we forget.
Lest we forget.
Stand down.
Would the members of the official party please be seated? We now welcome Her Excellency Professor the Honourable Margaret Gardner, Governor of Victoria, to present the ANZAC Day address.
The Honourable Jacinta Allen, Premier of Victoria, Senator Ralph Ciccone, representing the Prime Minister of Australia, His Excellency Mr. Vasyl Miroshnichenko, Ambassador of Ukraine, the Honourable Richard Marles, Deputy Prime Minister of Australia and Minister for Defence, Brad Batten, Leader of the Victorian Opposition, the Right Honourable Lord Mayor Nicholas Rees, Lord Mayor of Melbourne, Rick Nugent, Acting Chief Commissioner of Victoria Police, Captain Stephen Bowater, Chair of the Shrine of Remembrance Trustees, and Dean Lee, CEO, Shrine of Remembrance, Dr. Robert Webster, State President, Sue Cattermole, CEO, and members of RSL Victoria and members of other ex-service organisations, Victorian senior officers and members of the Australian Defence Force, representatives of the New Zealand Defence Force, United Kingdom and other defence forces, members of the Consular Corps. Let me begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the lands on which we are gathered, the Boonwurrung people, the Eastern Kulin Nation, and pay my respects to their elders, past and present, and thank in particular Uncle Mark Brown for his warm welcome to country this morning. Let me begin with a story about a man and his family, a story that was revealed publicly only a few years ago. Hailing from the regional Victorian town of Yendon, Thomas Frank Carr was a long way from home when he was completing his studies in Melbourne. He would travel even further after joining the 2nd Field Ambulance Division. Departing from Melbourne in October 1914, Frank, as he preferred to be called, did not sit his final exams. Instead, 110 years ago, he was sitting in the trenches of Gallipoli. He did not shy away from describing the war as he felt it, writing home to his family in these words: "Carrying men from off the top of the hills under an awful hail of shrapnel, but the thanks and the grips of the hands of the dying and wounded would only spur you on to do more." Those hands that reached out in their final moments were not the last Frank would tend to. He would continue his service on the Western Front and in Villers-Bretonneux. When the guns finally fell silent, the armistice did not end the war for Frank. For another 2.5 years, he was one of the Australian volunteers searching, exhuming and identifying the thousands of his dead countrymen among the shattered fields of Europe. When Frank returned to Australia, his friends, his family, and his home had changed, and so had he. After 7 years as a stranger in a dangerous and foreign land, it would take only another 7 before he passed away. For generations, the Carr family believed his death resulted from war wounds sustained years earlier. It was later understood that he tragically took his own life, and that was also a war wound. A poem published in the RSL's Duckboard in 1926 spoke to the experience of Frank and many other returned Anzacs. I am youth, brim full of vigour, unhampered by the weight of years, ambition soaring higher, bigger, unconquered by experienced fears. I am age, grown grim and hoary, crackling bones full of fears. War-worn, I tell another story, learned in the span of so few years. We sometimes reflect on war as a series of battles with clear beginnings and ends. It's almost how the history seems. We imagine that their ending brings a subsequent finality for those involved, but the impacts of conflict continue to reverberate long after the cacophony of war fades into silence. And the lowering of arms does not mean that those in that conflict are no longer gripped by it. Today, we acknowledge the 110th anniversary of the Gallipoli campaign and pay our respects to those that made that ultimate and tragic sacrifice upon those rocky and desolate shores. In honouring their memory, we too must extend our thoughts to those Australians that return to our land and remember the physical and mental weight of the conflict that they carried with them. Each and every Australian who has shouldered that weight in all conflicts and peacekeeping missions across our history has diligently undertaken a duty of utmost importance and devotion. Frank's story is one that many Victorians have shared and have shared in that same way. It is with a keen sense of sadness that we cast our thoughts back to a world where Frank might have completed his studies in pharmacy and not spent his formative years embroiled in the devastations of war. Nearly 100 years after his death, Frank finally received the recognition he deserved, a Distinguished Service Medal worn by his son, the late Pat Carr, on the same march that we will undertake today. We owe gratitude for the service of those who have participated in these conflicts. They have made it possible for countless people to pursue their dreams in a way that so many never had the opportunity to do, freed from the weight of conflict. Doing so in a land that offers the promise of peace, freedom, and opportunity. On behalf of Victorians and all who have known the privilege of this peaceful, free society, I thank those who have made sacrifices and given service. They have helped shape our nation, and we must in kind honour their duty and their courage by cultivating a nation of security and peace, lest we forget.
Lest we forget.
Thank you, Governor. The poem In Flanders Field by Colonel John McCrae will now be recited by Mr. A.J. Sonti, the Shrine of Remembrance Young Ambassador.
In Flanders fields the poppies blow, between the crosses, row on row, that mark our place, and in the sky the larks, still bravely singing, fly scarce heard amid the guns below. We are the dead, Short days ago we lived, felt dawn, saw sunset glow, loved and were loved, and now we lie in Flanders fields. Take up our quarrel with the foe. To you from failing hands we throw the torch, be yours to hold it high. If ye break faith with us who die, we shall not sleep, though poppies grow in Flanders fields.
Thank you, AJ. The Melbourne Symphony Orchestra Chorus, accompanied by the Air Force Band, present Abide With Me. Will the members of the official party please stand? The Melbourne Symphony Orchestra Chorus and the Air Force Band present the national anthems of New Zealand and Australia.
free let the Pacific trembles not from the shouts of strife and war. Make her praises heard afar, the defenders in Lord. Australians, so let us rejoice, for we are one and free. With gold and silver, wealth or toil, our home is girt by sea. Our land abounds in nature's gifts of beauty rich and rare. In history's page, let every stage advance Australia fair. With joyful strains then let us sing, advance Australia fair. Beneath our radiant Southern Cross, we'll toil with hearts and hands to make this Commonwealth of us renowned above the lands. For those who come across the seas, we found us place to share. With courage let us open wide to advance Australia fair. In joyful strains then let us sing, advance Australia fair.
The official party will now move to the sanctuary of the Shrine of Remembrance, where the Governor will lay a wreath. Members of the official party are carrying symbolic red poppies, which they will lay at the stone of remembrance. The red poppy, symbolic of Remembrance Day, is now used at all services honouring our veterans. The red poppies were the first flowers to grow in the spring in Flanders, across the once battle-mangled landscape of the Western Front during World War I. The sweet and delicate red bloom is a sign of life, a symbol of giving, and a reminder that even from the horror, there will be a future. With the official party in position in the sanctuary, I invite the Shrine Guard to take post. The Governor will now lay a wreath at the Stone of Remembrance on behalf of the people of Victoria. The Governor will now depart the sanctuary while the pipes and drums of the 5/6th Battalion Royal Victorian Regiment perform Sands of Kuwait with the Air Force Band. The official party will lay their poppies as they follow the Governor's departure. Shrine Guard, dismount. That concludes the ANZAC Day Dawn Service. On behalf of RSL Victoria, thank you for joining us in this reflection of dawn as we make our silent promises to always remember those who served and those who loved them and those who missed them. I'm Justin Smith, and thank you again to Uncle Mark Brown for his beautiful words and solid heart today. You will shortly be invited to lay a poppy in the sanctuary, and we invite you to make your way to the North Steps. Good morning, unless we forget.
Lest we forget. Okay, I believe that is the official end of the ceremonies. I stand corrected. Okay, however, I do think that might be where the Shrine of Remembrance have ended their stream. So that brings a close to the ANZAC Day 2025 Dawn Service here in Melbourne at the Memorial Shrine. Again, I just want to say thank you very much to everyone that joined me. I try to do this every year. Next year, I'm hoping that I might be able to actually physically attend in person with Scarlett, which would mean a significant amount to me. Unlike some I'll address the issues with the booing and the welcome to the country in another video, because this is in no way appropriate, and frankly, I'm still very much raging about that. So, how is it possible for ceremonies like this to occur and not expect people to be patriots in their own countries? Again, something I'll address at a later date. But anyway, I'm not going to use my usual sign off. So what I will say is, God bless the men and women who have given up their lives for the country in which I stand right now. And let's take a moment to remember the soldiers around the world that have all lost their lives fighting for what they believe in. Lest we forget.